Welcome back. It's been a year since Labor's Bill Shorten was elected to his party's top job and took over as opposition leader. Given the changing leadership in Labor in recent years, and for that matter among Liberal leaders when they were in opposition, that is something of a tick for Bill Shorten. He's also done well in the opinion polls in these last 12 months and kept his party together. But there is a lot of work the opposition still must do to win genuine voter support. This past year has been dominated, well, for a lot of the months by the budget, but also by foreign affairs and foreign policy. And for more on all that, I'm joined now by Labor frontbencher Michael Danby, who's in our Melbourne studio. Michael Danby, thanks for joining us.
Evening, Helen.
Now, your leader is 1 year in the top job, but it has been dominated by foreign policy, and Labor is now giving bipartisan support for the anti-IS military action in Iraq. Do you think the public supports Bill Shorten's position in this bipartisan attitude?
I think they do. I think the public is very concerned about the possibility of some of these I describe them as jihadist bogans returning from the Middle East who are Australian citizens and doing what IS promises to do here, and that is murder Australian citizens. So Labor's always a sure hands as far as the security and safety of Australians is concerned, but Bill's been performing great compared to where we thought we might be a year ago after that very heavy defeat. It's all green lights and blue skies as far as I'm concerned.
Well, just on IS, you mentioned them. I mean, do you think, for instance, that the Allies, and with Australia's support, should be helping in the fight in Kobani, near the Turkish border, to help the Kurds? They do seem to be struggling, and the US says, well, it's not really its priority.
I hope we're not too late with the whole situation, Helen. I don't, and the Labor Party doesn't support, and neither does the government intend, to put boots on the ground in Syria or Iraq. I think we did that previously and on a mistaken basis. But there are 10,000 of these Daesh gathered in Anbar province, nearly conquered every city close to Baghdad. I hope with American and Australian and other special forces training the Iraqi army, they can stand up to them. I'm sure that's the case in Kurdistan, but I feel very sorry for those poor people in Kobani. They
we're actually just
like
seeing some
run out of
live
ammunition.
shots. We've got some live shots now running as you're talking, but go ahead, Michael Danby.
Well, it looks like they'll run out of ammunition and be overrun, sort of something like the Alamo. It's actually more analogous to the situation in Warsaw at the end of 1944 when Stalin stood across the river and let the Nazis destroy the Polish Home Army. I wish we could make strong representations to Turkey, and the United States should be doing this along with all of the Western allies to take on the IS, to make sure that those people are not massacred there. I know US generals have said that strategically it's not important, but I'm sure to the 15,000 people living there, their lives are as important as anyone's.
Michael Danby, also, I mean, how are IS getting fresh supplies, fresh weapons? They've got much better weaponry, and the Kurds seem to have Kalashnikov rifles to fight back.
It's sad, isn't it, Helen? I think the Turks have prevented them being resupplied with any heavier weapons. I believe the Americans are negotiating with them at the moment. And frankly, the Western countries have to say to Turkey, look, we know you regard the PKK, which is the group that's fighting partially in Kobani, as bad guys, but sometimes you have to use people, as we did in the Second World War. We fought with the Russians to defeat the Nazis. Sometimes you have to, when you're faced with groups like IS, use people that are sort of not 100% to Turkey's taste. But the more worrying situation, Helen, is in Anbar province close to Baghdad. It would be terrible if while all of us are distracted watching what's happening in Kobani that the IS or Daesh made a major move on Baghdad.
Yeah, all right, and I just want to let viewers know that the footage that we're running now, just the previous footage to this, where you saw the black balaclavaed, black hooded men, that was IS supplied video. We have no way of knowing whether that's been verified. But Michael Danby, just moving away slightly from that, do you think, as Joe Hockey does, that Labor and Bill Shorten must pass Mr Hockey's proposed budget measures too if Labor really supports the role in Iraq? Are the two naturally linked, as Joe Hockey demands they should be?
Well, I mean, I'm in the odd situation of supporting the Prime Minister against his own treasurer. In a budget of hundreds of billions of dollars, a few hundred million can be reallocated, even within the defence budget, for this important task of confronting these people. And we're not doing it because we want to intervene in the whole world or install a democratic regime in Syria. We're doing it because there are people over there that might come back to Australia who are a threat to the safety of Australians. And I think Joe Hockey should, on national security, accept the Prime Minister's view that Labor is patriotic. We are supportive of the mission, and it's up to them to work out the finances.
In his first year, do you think Bill Shorten has strongly enough perhaps taken the argument up to Tony Abbott about potential broken promises in the budget cuts, as Tony Abbott very powerfully hammered away at Julia Gillard when she was Prime Minister?
Oh, I sure do. I mean, before all of this national security material was the first item on the agenda, since the shooting down of the plane and since Vladimir Putin's gangsters killed all of those Australians on that Malaysian flight, Labor was well ahead. I mean, politicians say to you, Helen, that we don't watch opinion polls, but we do very closely. And we were 56-44 at that stage. I think Bill has taken up the issues of broken promises on university fees, broken promises on indexing pensions. It's really been very effective. I mean, how many debates on a budget would last as long as we've been able to keep them going? And it's because of his strong leadership and the other front bench team. Old hands like Jenny Macklin really hitting hard on issues like pensions. So there's no acrimony in the Labor Party. We're ahead in the opinion polls, and we're developing policies that will, I think, be an attraction for people at the next election. So compared to where we were, Bill is owed great credit.
Do you agree with Anthony Albanese, who said yesterday on Australian Agenda that you guys in Labor should have better scrutinised the new anti-terror laws that you voted for, that they may go too far, particularly in penalties, jail sentences, etc., against journalists?
Look, I understand journalists' concern about reporting national security matters.
No, this is Anthony Albanese is concerned about this. He voted for it, you all voted for it.
Yeah, we all did, and Albo is right to have concerned about this, but we've got to get a balance, as Bill said, between the safety of Australians and the privacy or civil liberties concern of journalists.
All right, so Anthony Albanese was wrong to say it went too far. It may have gone too far, these laws.
We've got a public interest clause in the bill now that the Director of Public Prosecutions can take into account when he's considering these things. So I think that's a first step. Look, people in Labor are not anti-journalists, as you know, but we don't want these people coming back to Australia and killing Australians as they have in other countries in Europe already from that IS group that controls large parts of Iraq and Syria.
So Anthony Albanese was wrong?
Anthony Albanese has got a concern that may be valid, but we'll work it out over time. Most Australians would be more concerned, Helen, if we're talking about people leaking secrets of Australia as to why in Iraq Mr Snowden was able to give away all of the secrets of how the West intercepts telecommunications. Now that's the kind of thing that has nothing to do with privacy or civil liberties, and that we wouldn't want done by an Australian journalist. So you'd be happy that's quite a legitimate concern.
You'd be happy for someone like Edward Snowden to be completely stopped?
not completely stopped. I mean, he's entitled to his point of view. I think it's very significant that he's based there in Moscow with Mr Putin obviously having a hand on his shoulder. But I think some of the things that he's done in revealing material that's completely nothing to do with privacy. It's not me raising these things. There's a great Middle East reporter for the Christian Science Monitor, Dan Murphy, who raised these things. He said, why did Mr Snowden release this kind of material? And I think that's what Australian security services are concerned with.
All right, you mentioned Vladimir Putin. I wanted to get onto that. What can Australia do realistically to get some justice for the people who died on the MH17 plane that was shot down by Russian-backed fighters when we have to still invite President Putin to the G20? Won't he basically be laughing in our face?
He's a very formidable and very hard man, Helen. We shouldn't underestimate him. He nonetheless has the international community organised by Australia via the Security Council, and Julie Bishop's owed credit for this, demanding that there be a full and frank investigation, and I think that should be pressed at the G20. But rather than using expressions like shirt-fronting him, if we really want to send a message to Vladimir Putin, and I was Tony Abbott, I'd say, Premier Putin, we're going to make that temporary embassy in Kiev of Australia's permanent. We're going to send a trade mission to Ukraine and Poland. They both need more Australian business involvement. And perhaps if the Department of Foreign Affairs really wanted to tweak Mr Putin's nose, we could get a really effective leader of the Russian opposition, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, to come on a speaking tour of Australia. That's the way of handling Mr Putin. But don't underestimate him. He's doing things already that are undermining Australia's interests overseas.
I don't think anyone does underestimate him, actually. But look, I just want to get your views on another big issue, Ebola. Now, US President Barack Obama is calling for much tougher protocols as the first case of a healthcare worker contracting Ebola on American soil was confirmed today. Is Australia doing enough to help in Africa, but also enough to protect us in this country?
Well, I think the government should talk more about the protocols we've got here to protect Australians. I'm sure that they are in place, and we have very effective health services, and in fact we're very lucky because we're separated by oceans from other continents. People have to come here mainly by plane, and we can check them. But I received a very worrying...
Well, so is America from Africa.
Yeah, but they obviously have more people arriving from Sierra Leone and those places than we do. But Helen, I received a very worrying report from a leading Australian virologist who says that the World Health Organization projections about the spread of Ebola are underestimated. So I think your first point about Australia and the international community supporting a very intensive effort in Africa to try and limit this disease at its source is the real central cause that we should be looking at with Ebola. It's frightening. We need to take united international action, and I'm afraid that events in Hong Kong, eastern Ukraine, and even the events in the Middle East may prevent us seeing this major crisis creeping up on us.
Well, independent MP Bob Katter believes the current Australian quarantine processes for Ebola are inadequate. He's calling on the government to immediately implement a proper 21-day mandatory isolation quarantine period for our health workers returning from these Ebola-affected countries. Now, would you agree that perhaps just the kind of self-imposed home detention isn't enough? And Bob Katter's got a point, hasn't he?
Well, I think he may have a point. I think that the nurse that was released from the hospital is under very strict home supervision now. And you know, if it's a period of 21 days where we have to have people under strict home supervision, well, we should, because this is a very frightening disease and we need to be really well organised. And I think it's a shame that we don't know more about the government's national strategy with this. We've heard Julie Bishop say that she's not going to send health workers over there, but I want to know, and I'm sure the Australian public want to know, what the plan is with people arriving from Africa, including health workers who go there maybe with international organisations.
All right, Michael Danby, we will have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Helen.
And next, will the government break a pre-election promise and